Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 12 of the Vuelta a España 2024, brought to you by Lupine Lights. Lupine Lights, the finest lights I've ridden throughout my career, and I'm 52 years of age. I was pro for 25 years, and I was 13 when I first started riding road bikes. They are the finest lights I've used. With Bluetooth connectivity, you can work the lights from anywhere on your person, of course, and with the ability of dimming the lights and adjusting the height of the lights, you can run your batteries and get the maximum out of them. If you're looking to save 24% on your next set of Lupine Lights, use the code LupineLights24. Now let's get into today's stage 12 at 135 kilometers. We'll call it 85 miles in length. One summit finish at the finish of today's stage, 15.5 kilometers long, just under 5%. That means it's not incredibly difficult. But when we start looking a little bit closer into the climb, yes, it has some 10% and 12% sections, but it's not a monster length of time. So we know it's a good stage for the breakaway. Let's go back into yesterday, though, stage 11, where we saw with about 90 kilometers to go, where's AG2R spread across the road with 6 riders and one Wout van Aert in the middle of the group. These guys got some yellow cards, They're starting to try out a new technique here with the UCI where they're penalizing riders, much like we see in soccer, or if you're watching from Europe, football. As we see these guys are getting some yellow cards. Last night, Ben O'Connor was not happy about this when he was putting it up on his Instagram or Twitter text, whatever it was. But Ben O'Connor wasn't happy, and AG2R are getting penalized for a little bit of aggressive riding on yesterday's stage. The only problem is we don't really know exactly how Richard Carapaz crashed because the tree was in the way. Nico Roche, if you're watching on Flow Bikes, he was blaming it all on Darren Rafferty going up the road and said it was an overlap there of Richard Carapaz. But I couldn't see that. I couldn't tell. But I did tell you on yesterday's Butterfly Effect that AG2R looked like they were riding a little bit too aggressive, and the crash in there of Carapaz plus Darren Rafferty coming back and getting a little bit argued with from AG2R riders, along with the attack that we saw George Bennett doing on the right side with some bumping with AG2R riders, leads me to believe that somebody on that team's a little bit in the wrong. Well, UCI are taking my side too, and they threw out some yellow cards to a few of the AG2R riders. Now let's get into today's stage 12, because at that 135 kilometers, when the camera comes on proper, we get just a brief second of kilometer zero, and we see it's Marc Soler attacking before he hits kilometer zero. UAE team member certainly wants Soler in the front group, and when the cameras come on proper with about 110 kilometers to go, Soler's in this front group of 9 riders, but the peloton's hot on their heel, and in between the 9, we see another group there. We'll call it about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It starts growing while you're into the few kilometers here if the camera's on proper, but it's Wout van Aert in there, Albacine de Koenig's in there with 2 riders. As it grows a little bit bigger, Albacine de Kooning got 4 riders. They're riding the front. Wout van Aert's riding the front, but they can't bring back the 9 riders out front with Soler driving it as hard as he possibly can. We look back, the peloton wraps up the Wout van Aert and Albacine de Koenig group. Then we see another split, and in this split here, it's Vlasov. Vlasov's Bora Hansgrohe, and if you look a little bit further down the train there, we see Primoz Roglic is in this split, and that's why Vlasov is drilling it on the front. But when we look at the peloton, just back there in the picture, we see AG2R is driving it on the front, and Ben O'Connor's not too far away from the front, so they'll bring back that group. Then all of a sudden, we look at the front group of 9. They've been going full gas. We're 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers into it, and the peloton's hot on their heels still. Then we see Marc Soler as they're just about getting wrapped up. Soler throws in another dig on this uphill ramp here as the UAE team member's rider digs hard. He splits it with 4 other riders. We got 5 and 4 chasing them. Then you look in the back of the picture there, we see it's Jonathan Narvaez that's attacking for Team Ineos. He's in the white jersey. He's a national champion, and he's got 1 rider for company, but he's going to dislodge him and start bridging up to that back group of 4 to have 5 chasing 5. Then it comes together. We got 10 riders in the front group. In this front group, as I told you, Marc Soler's up there. Jonathan Narvaez, I said he's up there. Oscar Rodriguez, his teammate. Maury Van Savenoff from Quickstep. Carlos Verona's there. Mario Schmid. Louis Menkes. Max Poole from DSM. Harold Tejada from Astana. And Pablo Castrillo up there from Kern Farmer. That gives us 10 riders at the front, and the gap is starting to extend. We do get 2 riders that are trying to bridge across when we look further back. That's going to be Israel Premier Tech's Michael Woods, and he's got Lawrence Wee up there from Arkea Samsic pulling with him. But these guys, once the gap gets out to 1 minute and 30, and it's 4 minutes on the peloton behind, these 2 guys are going to decide to pull the plug. I don't know if this is a good decision. You have to be one of these two riders to know if it's good or not. But once the peloton's pulled the plug and the gap's going up to 4 and 5 minutes, you know the group of 10 up there is probably going to back off the throttle just a little bit. So while I was sitting on the Chesterfield, I was wondering if Michael Woods and Lawrence Weed did a good job here of actually pulling the plug, even though the gap was at 1:30 and they lost 30 seconds while chasing. I gotta believe they lost that time because the peloton was still close on time. But once that gap got a little bit bigger to the group of 10, maybe the gap probably eases up a little bit. And Michael Woods and Lawrence Wheat, if they had some legs, might have been able to bridge a gap, but they decided to pull the plug, so they get caught by the peloton. Now we got 10 riders going up the road. And the gap starts increasing up to about 10 minutes with about 50 kilometers to go. We come down a descent into the final climb with 15.5 kilometers to go. We see the group of 10 reaching the bottom of the climb, but it's a soft start here to stage 12's final summit climb. So we go back and look at the peloton. It's getting a little bit nervous for the first time. From basically the time the group of 10 broke away with about 85 kilometers to go when they finally let off the leash there, all the way into 15.5 kilometers ago, you could be taking a nap. Nothing was happening. But now the peloton's a little bit nervous going curb to curb. We go back up to the front as they started this climb proper, and we'll see the first attacks coming from Soler. Soler throws in a dig. It's brought back right away. Then we're going to see Carlos Verona from Little Trek throw in his next attack. As he's getting brought back, he's on the left side of the road. He veers over to the right. He veers back to the left. He veers back to the right. And then all of a sudden, with just over 10 kilometers to go, we see the next attack from Pablo Castrillo up there from Kern Pharma. He throws in everything on the pedals. Perfect timing at this moment, because just a few hundred meters after he attacks, there's a little roller coaster in this climb as it starts to drop down. If you're not a pure climber, and Pablo is not a pure climber, but a lot of these guys in this break here are not pure climbers. They're all decent, but not pure. Now we see Pablo up front digging as the road's dropping down, and we see the group behind get a little bit wider. Oscar Rodriguez comes back to this group, and if I back the film up just a little bit, he was off the back, so that's how you know they're playing games along with they're going wide across the road. This allows Ineos' Oscar Rodriguez to get back. Then we're going to see Soler throw an attack as Oscar Rodriguez follows it directly. This isn't going to work out here for Soler because Oscar Rodriguez, as I just told you, got dropped earlier, so you know his legs are not good at this moment. So tactically, he's thinking, nope, I can't work with Soler. I just got dropped, and I got Narvaez, Jonathan Narvaez, my teammate back there, who does have good legs. So you know he's going to not work with Soler. That means the group comes back together, but we still got one rider out front, Pablo Castrillo, up there from Kern Pharma. He's digging deep, looks back over his shoulders a few times, but then keeps digging with everything. He's swaying on the bike with every pedal stroke because he's trying to find the maximum amount of effort. Then with 8.5 kilometers to go, we see it's Mario Schmid throwing in attack from Jaco Lula. With the attack there from Mario Schmid, he's going up and he's stuck in between the gap. He closed up about 10, 15 seconds, so he's halfway between the two groups, but can't quite close up there to Pablo. We look back at the group behind as they're coming into about 7.5 kilometers to go. This is where they make the left turn. Now the climb's going to really start proper right here at 7.5 kilometers to go. We can start going up front. We look at Pablo. He needs some water on the side of the road there as he's dousing himself. We go back and look at the guy chasing. Well, that's Mario Schmid, still stuck in nowhere land right now, and he's going to need some help because he's not quite closing the gap up there to Pablo. We go further down. Who's chasing? Oscar Rodriguez is chasing. That means that he's got belief that Jonathan Narvaez is going to be able to throw an attack. We see that come, and once Narvaez gets a gap, he's got some company because he's got Max Poole from DSM on his wheel. Those two riders will start to bridge up and catch Schmid with about 4 kilometers to go. Then 700 meters after that, we see the Solerism has bridged back up to make 4 riders chasing one up front. That's got about a 25-second gap on those 4 riders chasing. The only problem with the group of 4 is that Mario Schmid is not working. Remember, he couldn't close the gap. He got caught at 400 meters, so he's just sitting on the back, not willing to work with the 3 riders up front. Now we go into 1.9 kilometers to go. Soler throws in attack, but he can't get the gap on the chasers behind, so he's brought back. And we see Kern Pharma still going solo up there with 1K to go. Now we go into about 900 meters to go in the group of 4. We see Max Poole throw in a huge acceleration. This finally breaks the elastic on the riders on his wheel as 3 of them are coming off the back. Max Poole's starting to make some inroads up there, but it's 500 meters to go as we see the first rider, Pablo Castrillo, rounding the bend at 500 meters to go. He's going to round the bend, drift all the way to the left side of the road. He gets up to about 300 meters to go. Then we see Max Poole coming around that bend behind him. There's a little bit of time to be able to win this stage for Max Poole from DSM if he's got the legs. But we go another 100 meters up front there. We see Pablo looking over his shoulder. He knows he's going to win it. He sits up, starts celebrating as he's going to win the stage here for Kern Farmer. What's happening back there in second place? Max Pooley's digging deep trying to cross the line here. He's just a few seconds off of the time there of Pablo for second. And Soler, if I back you up as we look further down the climb, Soler dislodged Narvaez there with about 400, 350 meters to go. He'll round out the podium. We go back up to Kern Farmer Pablo as he gets hugs there, and then the mic's thrown into his face at this moment, but he's exhausted. He falls over the handlebars. We start looking at the rest of the staff on his team. They're crying, they're hugging. It's an emotional moment right here for Kern Farmer because their former president and founder Manolo Ascana had passed away earlier. They announced it in the stage today. So it was an emotional moment right here for Kern Farmer. They're a small team. This is a massive race here at the Vuelta a España, stage 12, here to take a victory. But this is the amazing part of sports. When everything comes on a low, something in sports always can bring you up in a higher moment. And you see the whole team here emotional. You see Pablo celebrating. You see the staff hugging. Everybody's crying. This is the beauty of sports and what makes everything so magical. Now let's go back down and look and see what happened to the general classification favorites. As they were coming up the climb, it was AG2R on the front. They were going curb to curb, easy in the climb as they were setting a steady pace. Then all of a sudden we see a little further up the climb at AG2R is riding the front, but nothing's happening. None of the favorites are attacking. The climb is just not steep enough up here to make any inroads on the general classification. So Bora Hansgrohe, Primoz Roglic holds steady on the wheel there as we see it Skilmos crossing the line about 6 minutes and 30 seconds back from the stage winner of Pablo. Now, tomorrow's stage, when we go into that, well, it's a summit finish climb much like today's, but more difficult. We're talking 9%. So we're going to see some general classification battle on tomorrow's stage 13 for sure. When I break down the tactics here on today's stage 12, well, Kern Farmer's Pablo said in his interview that he won because of tactics. This is when you need tactics. When you're not the strongest rider in the race, when you're not a pure climber, you have to go at the right moment and you have to go with 100% dedication. At 10 kilometers ago when Pablo attacked, he knew that the flat section and slight descent of the rollers was coming up, which he also knew that he needed a little bit of tactical problems back there with the group. That's what he got. He got a 30-second advantage. He went everything into the pedals all the way from 10 kilometers to the summit of today's stage, and he was capable of winning stage 12 of the Vuelta a España because tactically he raced it incredibly intelligent. He picked the perfect moment to attack, and what he really needed was hesitation in the back of the group there, which he got once everyone back there didn't want to do any work pulling each other, and Mario Schmid was sitting on from 4 kilometers to go all the way into the finish. That allowed Kern Farmer's Pablo up there to be able to win the stage and take a fine victory for Kern Farmer. Tip of the hat there to Pablo on today's victory here at stage 12. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys for the next edition of stage 13 of the Vuelta a España.